Well, welcome. I'm excited to see you all here today. I just want to say welcome. My name is Jeremy, and I'm part of the service programming team here. And all that means is I get to work with a great group of people every single week, and we put together all the Sunday morning experience elements that happen. So music, production, media, programming, guest services, all of these things. I love what I get to do, and I'm so excited to be here today. Because as I watch that video and I think about Thanksgiving coming up, a lot of things come to mind. I think about food, obviously. I think about family, football. And I also think about the fact that I have gradually become one of North Point's holiday preachers. And the reason I share that is because my wife, Ashley, and I, this is her, we don't have any kids. And Buck has a lot of kids. In fact, he has 5 sons. And so whenever the kids are out, Buck is out, and one of us holiday preachers gets put up here in his place. But I am excited to be here, and Thanksgiving for me has really changed over the last 10 years. It's morphed quite a bit, perhaps it has for you as well. 10 years ago, I was just a teenager, and Thanksgiving was really just something I did with my parents. It was a normal family thing. And then I met Ashley in high school. We're high school sweethearts. And Thanksgiving became a little different because then I found myself going over to her house for Thanksgiving and her parents. And I remember doing this, and I really wanted to make a great first impression. And so I was going over there, and all the extended family was there, and I remember we were kind of hanging out. And her dad kind of pulls me aside, and he's a very large man. And he said, "Hey, will you help me with something outside really quick?" And what happened for the next 4 hours was hanging Christmas lights on the entire house. I kid you not. And now that I look back on it, I think it was a test because I don't typically look at somebody like me vertically and go, "Man, that guy must be great at hanging Christmas lights." Like, I just don't think anybody does that. So I'm pretty sure it was a test, but I passed the test. Ashley and I got married. Thanksgiving now, today, is really the whole double Thanksgiving thing. So we go to my parents, we go to her parents for lunch. We go to my parents for dinner. We spend it that way, or on Wednesday or Thursday, we mix it up. And one of the things I love about it is that we don't just go home with one set of leftovers, but we go home with 2 sets of leftovers every single time. It is fantastic. We are fed for like a week. But Thanksgiving, as I was thinking about it this week, I discovered some interesting statistics. I don't know if you knew this, but we're about to celebrate Thanksgiving's 400th anniversary, not this year, but in just a couple years. Because the first Thanksgiving was in 1621, almost 400 years ago. It lasted for 3 days, and there were 140 people involved. So it was a big party. It was a big celebration, which 3 days today, now that we have the modern day Thanksgiving that we celebrate, is pretty interesting because today, the average American consumes 4,500 calories on Thanksgiving Day. We normally should have about 2,000 calories on any given day. To put this into perspective, we eat, just to make you guys feel really great about yourselves this morning, this is the equivalent of 6 Burger King Whoppers. So 2 for breakfast, 2 for lunch, and 2 for dinner. Some of you in here are like second guessing the thirds on pie you're going to go for. And then some of you, this doesn't even faze you. Like, you're like, challenge accepted. Let's go. Let's do this, right? But Thanksgiving has morphed for me over the years. And one of the things that's always been amusing to me is that when we finish our meal and, we finish the whole celebration, at about 5 p.m., stores open up for something called Black Friday. I'm curious, just by a quick show of hands, who participates in Black Friday, not just the stores, but maybe you do online shopping or Amazon or something like that over the weekend? Wow, okay, more of you than first service. That's good. Well, I love Black Friday because I like getting deals on stuff. It's a great time to buy presents for family and friends. And I just think it's funny that we've literally broken the calendar culturally because Friday starts at 5 p.m. on Thursday nowadays, right? But when I look at these 2 days, there's kind of this juxtaposition, and when we take a step back, you guys probably notice this as well, because Thanksgiving is all about this idea of gratitude. We should be thankful for what we have in our life. We should be grateful for the things around us. While Black Friday is all about more. This crazy chase for more stuff. And sometimes it's more in the sense we're going to buy gifts for family and friends, but it's essentially a chase for more stuff. And it's just fascinating that we spend 1 day a year being thankful for what we have the other 364, and then we end that day by going out to the stores and buying more stuff to get ready for the next 364 days until we're grateful again. And it's just fascinating to me because we grow up in this culture and, we tell our kids or we tell kids that we should have this thing. We should have this attitude of gratitude thing. Y'all say that with me. Attitude of gratitude. Yeah, I think like half of you rolled your eyes when you said it. And the reason is because I think culturally it's become a little bit of a cliche. Like it's this cheesy thing that, we should have an attitude of gratitude. And that's how I've always felt about it. It wasn't until just a couple years ago I had an experience that changed my mind about this whole attitude of gratitude thing. It was an experience with Ashley's grandma. Her name is Joyce. This is Joyce and Ashley. And as you can tell, they have a pretty great relationship. They were really close while Ashley was growing up. And I think the reason they have such a good relationship is because they both have really spunky, goofy personalities. And so it totally plays itself out like on any given basis when we're hanging out together. And unfortunately, a couple of years back, we found out that Joyce has Alzheimer's. So, this was early onset a couple of years back, but now it's developed. And if you've ever been on the other side of that, you know that there's heartbreak and there's a lot of things that come with that. But because of Joyce's spunky personality, her and Ashley still have a lot of fun together, and it's created some really fun memories. For instance, every time I go over there nowadays, pretty much almost every time, Joyce doesn't know who I am because she forgot I was later on in life for her. So every time we walk in, she looks at me, and in the total grandma voice, she goes, "Ashley, who is that boy?" And I've noticed it's never man, it's always boy. I'm not upset about it, I've just noticed it. It's always, "Who is that boy?" And Ashley has come up with different scenarios and names every time that this happens. So one response has been, "Grandma, that's my boyfriend, Kevin." And she just makes up a name. Or she say, "Grandma, we found this guy on the side of the road. His name is Richard. He's come to meet you." And she's used that. And the best one is, "Grandma, that's LeBron James. That's my husband, LeBron James." And Grandma, every time, will just look at me, and she'll do this like up-down thing and go, "Well, okay." And then we just kind of move on with our day. But this is the experience with Joyce. This is what always tends to happen. But a few years ago, it was early onset Alzheimer's, so it hadn't totally taken effect yet. We just found out about the diagnosis. And we had Thanksgiving, and I remember we were all hanging out at her parents' house. And we were holding hands, and we were doing the whole, go around and share one thing you're grateful for. And I was, oh gosh, really, we're going to do this whole attitude of gratitude thing. I was so cynical about it. And so we all go around and we share, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm thankful for the Longhorns, which is hard to say now because it's hard to be grateful for them right now. But I said it then, and I said that, and then it went on, and then it goes all the way around the circle, and it gets to Joyce, and she's the last person. And I'll never forget what she said because it just kind of stumped me a little bit because she looks down for a second, and then she looks back up, and she said, this year, I'm just thankful that I still have my brains. She said, I'm just thankful that I still have my brains, that she could remember this one for just a little bit longer. And when I heard that, I was stumped because here I was, this cynical person, all about this attitude of gratitude. And I saw that, I heard that, and I thought, man, there's something more to it. And everybody around us in the circle, I remember there were a couple of tears because a lot of people knew what was coming with her life and what was on the horizon. But when I think about this word and that experience, this word gratitude, it really floored me because I was this cynical person, but then I just thought, man, there's something more to it. It has a deeper meaning. I've lost sight of gratitude. I think that's true for a lot of us. I think culturally we've tended to lose sight of gratitude where we've drifted to where it's just become this cliche attitude of gratitude, cheesy thing that we talk about from time to time. But what happens when we lose sight of gratitude is something else rises in its place. And that something else is sneaky and it's damaging to our life, and we don't like to admit that we have it. And that something else is discontentment. Discontentment. We feel discontent about our life when we lose perspective, when we lose sight of gratitude. And this plays itself out in a lot of different areas, not just with our stuff. But we might wake up in the morning and look in the mirror and we feel discontent with our bodies or our self-image. Or we might look at our paychecks or our job and feel discontent there. We might look at our family, our spouse, our loved ones, our kids, and feel discontent and bitter towards their behavior. We might go to somebody else's house on Thanksgiving, and it feels like Chip and Joanna threw up all over their house, and they just went to Magnolia for the 17th time. So we go home and we plan a trip to Waco so we can catch up. Perhaps we feel discontent. there. I think we feel discontent in a lot of areas of our life. And here's what happens when we do, is we tell ourselves, once I get here, once I get that thing, once I get that job, once I arrive at that place, once I get to that relationship, or once we move into the house, or we get the car, whatever it is, once I get here, you know what? Then I'll be happy. Then I'll be happy. Then I'll have a reason to feel gratitude in my life. And we tell ourselves that. And here's the dilemma in that line of thinking. Because whatever this is, fill in the blank for you, it might deliver temporary happiness, but it just doesn't last. I think if we're honest and objective in this conversation, it just doesn't last. We say all the time that money doesn't buy happiness. Well, I think it does buy happiness. I think it's awesome when you get to experience something and enjoy what you've worked hard for. But I think it just doesn't last. And here's how I know this is true for all of us, because when we get to that point, we get to that temporary happiness, that momentary high, there comes a day when we look to our right and we look to our left and we notice something better, or we notice something bigger, or we notice something fancier or shinier, or we notice someone who's skinnier, or somebody who's stronger, or someone who's prettier, and then we notice somebody else's kids who are smarter or more successful, and we notice other people that are more successful, and all of a sudden there's more ladder to climb, and we see all of these things around us bigger and better, and all of a sudden we tell ourselves, you know what, I thought it was here that I was going to be content and happy. Actually, it's there. Once I get there, then I'll have a reason to be happy. Then I'll have a reason to be grateful in my life. And this cycle just happens, and it occurs in our life over and over and over again. And what it does is it robs us of our contentment and happiness and peace and joy. It robs us of our relationship with God, because we're always thinking about the ways in which He hasn't provided for us. And so what do we do with that? What do we do with this whole discontentment thing? How do we beat this discontentment thing? So I think it comes back to this word gratitude. And truly understanding, again, not drifting away from it, but truly understanding what gratitude is actually all about, because it unlocks something for your life and mine that allows us to beat the discontentment that we experience. And so today I want to ask the question, what is greater than grateful? What's greater than grateful? This whole we should be more grateful, this whole attitude of gratitude thing, what is more significant than that, and why should we care? And we find this, it's illustrated in a story in the New Testament. And I love this story because regardless of where you're at, your religious background, your belief, your church, unchurched, whatever it might be, regardless of where you're at, this story, the application that we get is applicable to your life today. Because one of the things that we say all the time here is following Jesus doesn't just make your life better, but following His principles makes you better at life. And that could not be more true with what we learn in this story as it relates to our discontentment. But it's written by a guy named Luke. He was a disciple of Jesus in the first century. He was a historian. He was a doctor. He was a really smart guy. And he accounted Jesus' 3 years of ministry on earth, and the story happens in those 3 years of ministry. Here's what Luke writes. On the way to Jerusalem, he, Jesus, was passing along between Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered a village, he was met by 10 lepers who stood at a distance. And it's important to note that leprosy today, we understand it very differently than they did back then in the first century, because it's not as common today. We have modern medicine. But back then, it was greatly feared and it was greatly misunderstood. People just knew what it did to you. It affects your nerves and your skin. It leaves all these spots. You can lose limbs. It creates deformities, all of these things. And they knew that it was contagious as well. And so people feared lepers. They didn't want to be anywhere near them. They were seen as less than. They were animals, and they were even outcasted from society. A little bit more context, a sidebar to give this some context, but I went to film school at UT, but I never considered myself a great film school student. I thought I was the worst film school student because my friends would come to me and they would say, hey, bro, have you seen that new Russian movie? And it's like in black and white, and it's shot on 16 millimeter, and it's 4 hours long, and the best part is that nobody talks the whole time. And I would go, have you guys seen the new Avengers movie? Like, that was awesome. And because of this, I was just the worst film school student. But I did learn some things while I was there. There's different names that you use for certain things on set. For instance, an extension cable is actually called a stinger in the film world. So they had all these different names. And there was one thing that happened whenever anybody would turn on a light on a film set. Because these lights are really bright, and if you find yourself looking into the light, it's really harsh. It could be damaging to your eyes. And so before somebody would turn on the light, they would hit the switch and they would yell, "Striking!" And you knew that if you were on set and you heard the word striking, then you want to look down and look away and make sure you don't catch yourself looking into the light because it could be damaging for your eyes. And being a leper in the first century was very similar to this, because lepers, by law, had to walk around and they had to yell, "Unclean, unclean, unclean," to warn other people of their presence so that people could get away. Can you imagine how lonely and isolating it was to be a leper in the first century? That's why Luke writes that they stood at a distance. And then he goes on, they stood at a distance and lifted up their voices, saying, "Jesus, Master, have mercy on us." So that they stand at a distance and they have to yell to get to Jesus. And they say, "Hey, apparently you're this Messiah guy. You've done all these miracles recently. And we don't know if we believe in that, but man, our lives are pretty bad. Would you have mercy on us? Would you heal us if you can actually do that?" And then Jesus replies in kind of a surprising way. He says, when he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourselves to the priests." To which we go, okay, well, Jesus, what does that mean? But in the first century, the way that you got your life back, if you were a leper, the way that you were readmitted back into society is if you were miraculously healed, you got better, and then you went to show yourself to a priest, and the priest approved you. He said, "Yeah, you are now fit for society. You are clean. You can be a part of society again." And what happened is Jesus says, "Go and show yourselves to the priest." And when he said this, I would imagine the lepers go, "Well, we're not better yet." And Jesus is saying, "Just go, just trust me." And they're like, "Okay, well, this guy might be crazy, but our lives are already pretty bad. We don't have a lot to lose." And then Luke captures in one simple sentence what happens when they go. He says, "And as they went, they were cleansed." As they went, they were cleansed. As they went, they were healed. And for me, like I said, I went to film school, so sometimes I see things in like a movie type way. And I see this little sentence illustrated in like a movie, and it's like golden hour, it's sunset, it's in slow motion. And my guess is that if somebody were directing this, there would be like gladiator music underneath this entire scene, just like that. And then I would imagine what happens is they begin to walk in the direction of where the priest is in the town. And they begin to walk, and all of a sudden they look down at their hands, and they see all these spots, these scabs, these scars disappear. And they see all these things go away, and they begin to unwrap their blood-stained clothing because they're covered in clothes to keep themselves hidden from other people. And they unwrap their clothing, they're looking at each other, they're showing their faces to one another, their eyes get wide, I would imagine. And as this happens, I bet they begin to sprint, they begin to run. Because they know that real life is on the other side of getting to that temple, showing themselves to the priests. So they're sprinting in that direction, and then they stop. Just one of them stops. 9 more go on. One stops. And he turns around and looks back towards where he just came, where Jesus was. And look at this. Here's what Luke writes. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, that he was cleansed, that he was better, turned back, began running back in the direction of Jesus, praising God with a loud voice. Remember, these guys could project. They knew how to yell unclean, but now this guy is praising God with a loud voice. And he fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Giving him thanks. It wasn't enough for him to get to this new life that was right on the edge of showing himself to a priest. He had to turn back, and he had to go back, and he had to express his gratitude to Jesus. So Jesus sees this, and Jesus responds, "Were not 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Why is there only 1? Weren't 10 people healed? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" And he said foreigner because this man was a Samaritan, and Samaritans were hated by Jewish people. And Jesus, in saying this, is saying to this crowd and saying to this man, he elevates the faith of a foreigner, of a Samaritan that everybody hated, over the faith of Jewish people. And then he turned to the man who's on the ground in front of him. He turned to him, he looked him in the eyes, and he said this statement to wrap up the entire thing. He said, "Rise and go your way. Go show yourself to the priest. Go get the life that you've always wanted." Your faith expressed through gratitude has made you well. And notice he doesn't say cleansed or healed here. He says well, because this word well actually means an inner sense of peace. It's mind, it's spirit, it's his heart is now well. He now has contentment and peace, not because of what he's experienced in his life, but because of the gratitude that he expressed through his faith. And Jesus illustrates something to this man, the people who are listening, the people who are reading Luke's writing, and to all of us today. It's still relevant to us today, 2,000 years later. He illustrates this simple but profound point that happy people are grateful people. Happy people are grateful people. So often we think that our happiness lies on the other side of us getting to that place, when in reality, right where we're at, when we choose gratitude over discontentment, it allows us to be happy right where we are. So back to our question. What is greater than grateful? What's greater than this whole attitude of gratitude thing? Well, that's the thing. There's a catch. We always think that there is something better, there is something greater. But there is nothing greater than grateful. Gratitude is what leads to happiness. Brené Brown, perhaps you've heard of her or seen her Netflix special. She's a researcher, a psychologist. She says it like this. What's crazy is she captures this point 2,000 years later, but it's so relevant to each of us. And she says this: the root of joy is gratefulness. The foundation of happiness is gratefulness. It is not joy that makes us grateful. It's not getting there that then allows us to be happy. It is gratitude that makes us joyful. She's not the only one to have discovered this in modern day research. Harvard Health did a study where they took two different groups of people. One group, they had write down things that they were thankful for. And another group, they had write down things that frustrated them about their life. And they did this over a span of 10 weeks. And here's what they say. Here's what they found. After 10 weeks, those who wrote about gratitude were more optimistic and felt better about their lives. They were happier people. And not only this, look at this. Surprisingly, they also exercised more and had fewer visits to physicians. Not only were they mentally and emotionally happier, positive people, they literally got physically healthier because they wrote down things they were grateful for in their life. That's crazy. Why? Because happy people are grateful people. You don't get to happiness by getting what you ultimately want. You get to happiness by being grateful for what is right in front of you. And I so desire this for every single person in this room. I want this for you, for me, for all of us. I want us to practice gratitude and experience the happiness that comes as a result of it. But in order for us to practice this, we have to unlearn the old things, the old perceptions of this attitude of gratitude that we have in our life. We have to unlearn these myths that we subconsciously follow and believe about gratitude. The first myth is this, is that we think things have to be going good in order to be grateful. I know grammatically correct would be things have to be going well, but what I mean is things have to be going good in order to be grateful, because we think that in the bad, we can't be grateful. We always let our external circumstances drive our ability to practice gratitude in our life. I want to pause here for a second, because I realize there are painful and hard things that we experience. And if you're going through something or you're coming out of a season, I want to pause and recognize that, because there is a time for mourning. There is a time for processing, and gratitude feels so far away. But my point is that we don't have to wait forever to begin to express gratitude, because perhaps it points us to the good. Jordan Peterson, he's a pretty controversial guy, but he's got a podcast that's really interesting. And I listened to it, and he's an author now. He's a professor at the University of Toronto. And here's what he says about gratitude. In order to be properly grateful, you have to understand what it would be like to be suffering and deprived, because otherwise you think that the normal state of affairs is that things work. In order to understand gratitude, you have to know what bad feels like. Otherwise, you think it's just good all the time. He goes on to say, and that's not the normal state of affairs. We all experience hardship or bad things in our life. It's amazing that anything complex ever works, and the fact that so many complex things work around us is really, in a sense, miraculous. But if things work, you ignore them. If things are just good all the time, you never know what bad feels like, and you're never driven to be grateful in the bad for what is good, and it never points you to what is positive. Think about the story of the leper. He actually hadn't gotten to being readmitted into society again. but he chose to go back and express gratitude, and it was gratitude that gave him peace in the midst of his hardship in his life. About 18 months ago, my parents approached me, and they had a proposition. Ashley and I had been saving for a house, and we were saving, and we were getting excited, we were getting closer, and my parents said, hey, we want to help with that. Do you guys want to move into the guest house that we have in the back? And, we talked about it, and we were like, should we do this? We asked some people. We found out that people do this all the time. So we said, okay, yeah, that's huge. Thank you. That's such a big blessing to us. And so we moved into the guest house to try and save up money. We were rent-free for a while. It was awesome. And, a little bit of context about this guest house. I want to give you guys some first world problems here for a second. I just want to caveat it with that. But when I say guest house, what I really mean is like guest structure. It's like kind of this 500 or 600 square feet thing. And so for 11 months, we learned how to cook with a microwave and an Instant Pot, washed all of our dishes by hand. And this house, it was really one of those things where if you were standing in the living room, you were in the bedroom, master bedroom, guest bedroom, you were in the kitchen, you were in the dining room, it was all in one. The only thing that was separate was the bathroom. And dividing the rest of the house from the bathroom was a thin curtain. And so, during this 11 months that we lived here, we decided, okay, we're going to build a house. We saved up enough money. We decided to do the whole building thing. So during this process, we'd go and visit and see the progress as to what was going on. And I remember vividly, one day we got there, and I saw something new had happened. And so I walked into the house. I noticed it, ran to the bathroom. I turned around and looked into the bathroom in the master bedroom, and I yelled back to Ashley. I said, babe, you're not going to believe this. They put a door on our bathroom. They put a door. I didn't even see that in the contract. I didn't know. That's like a bonus. We got a door on our bathroom. That's incredible. And I was so excited because we had lived with a curtain. And when we first started the house process, I was so stingy and discontent, all the upgrades and blah, blah, blah. And when we lived with a curtain for 11 months, I was so elated to have a door to the bathroom. My point with that is this. Again, first world problems. I totally get that. But I would have never been grateful for that door if I hadn't first experienced the curtain. My point with that whole story is that you can learn to be grateful in the good and the bad. Oftentimes, it is the negative situations that point us to the positive and allow us to appreciate the things like doors that we would normally take for granted. You can learn to be grateful in the good and the bad. The second myth is this, is that you have to feel grateful to be grateful. So often we put our feelings, we say, well, I don't feel grateful, so I can't be grateful. Which, if we use that line of logic in everything we did, we would never get anything done. Because I never feel like eating broccoli, but I know when I do, I feel like a healthier person. I become a healthier person. Sometimes, to be honest, I don't feel like being intentional in my marriage, but I know when I am, I love my marriage so much more as a result. And the same is true with gratitude. Eugene Peterson, who's a pastor and author who passed away just a couple years ago, he says it like this. He says, act your gratitude, pantomime, or force yourself or to express, pantomime your thanks. You will become that which you do. By forcing yourself to express gratitude, you end up feeling like a more grateful person. Why? Because gratitude is an action. It's an action. It's not just a feeling. Notice that the other 9 guys, they could have very well felt grateful, but this one had to go all the way back just to act his gratitude, to express his gratitude. And it's not just an action, but for us, it's not just something we do 1 out of 365 days a year. It shouldn't be an attitude of gratitude. It should be a habit of gratitude, something that we do on a regular basis, consistently over time. Perhaps for you, that would be a journal. Maybe it's writing things down in a journal that you're grateful for. That's been a personal one for me. Or maybe for you, it's sitting around the dinner table before you dig in and you just all go around and share something you're grateful for, which originally I would have thought, that's kind of a cliche thing, and I would imagine when you begin to practice it, you all start and go, thankful for this fork, thankful for the knife. And then over time, as you practice it, it changes to something more real in your life, and it becomes, I'm thankful that I have a healthy family to share this meal with. And it changes over time. Maybe it's setting a reminder for you in your life. Maybe, perhaps, it's you take that one exit on the highway every single day to work. And for you, practicing gratitude is saying, hey, when I take that exit, I'm just going to think about 3 things I'm grateful for. Whatever it is, it's not enough to be a feeling. It has to be an action, and it has to be something that we do consistently on a regular basis over time. And the third, final myth that we have to unlearn if we want to apply gratitude in our life is this. It's that gratitude is just recognizing what you have. Gratitude is just recognizing what you have. Disclaimer on this one. If you're in here and you're not a Christian and you're not a follower of Jesus, then you can opt out of this one. This one is just optional for you. That's totally fine. But if you're in here and you are a Christian and you consider yourself a follower of Jesus, then this one is where gratitude becomes more personal in your life and where it becomes applied to your relationship with your Heavenly Father. Because so often, we're tempted to look around at all that we have and our families and our jobs and our health and everything and go, look at what I have created. And we should do that. We should take pride in what we have. But the problem lies when we stop there. We don't invite God into that, because gratitude isn't just seeing what you have. Gratitude is recognizing what you've been given. Looking around at everything you have in your life and recognizing and saying, God, thank you. Thank you for the way that you have provided for me. Just by a quick show of hands in here, who in here is a parent? I'm just curious. Raise your hand if you're a parent. Okay, awesome. Now, another show of hands, raise your hand if you love it when your kids express gratitude to what you provide in their life. Raise your hands again if you love that. Yeah, almost every single hand went back up, right? How do you think your Heavenly Father feels when we express gratitude to Him? He loves it when we say thank you for what He's provided in our life. It is honoring to Him. Because what happens as we do it, as we grow in our relationship with Him, it begins to shift our perspective. We see things in our life differently when we apply gratitude in our relationship with God and we say, thank you for what you provided for me. I think so often we're tempted to go through life like this, and we say, big me, my problems, my discontentment, my unhappiness, my thoughts, my emotions, and God is just kind of little over here. But when we begin to apply gratitude in our relationship with God, it shifts our focus. We wake up each day and we say, God, thank you for my spouse, my husband, my wife, thank you. Thank you that I don't have to be married today. I don't have to be married to them. I get to be married to them today. God, thank you for that. And they're made in your image. That is awesome. Thank you for that, God. It's waking up each day and going, God, thank you for my house. I don't have to clean my second bathroom today. I get to clean my second bathroom today. It's waking up and saying, God, thank you for my car. You know, I get in it and sometimes yes, it started. I get to go to work again another day. God, thank you for that. Thank you that I don't just have one car, but I have 2 or 3 cars. And thank you that we all have this little house for our cars that we call a garage, and it's connected to our real house. And we get to put our cars in the garage. God, thank you for that. That's amazing. God, thank you for our kids. You know, we don't have to be intentional in their life today. God, we get to be intentional in their life. God, thank you for my church. I don't have to come and serve and be a part of this. God, I get to serve and be a part of something bigger and see what you're doing in the lives of people in this community. God, thank you for that. God, thank you just for breath and life today. God, I get to live another day. That's incredible. God, thank you for your son, Jesus. Because of him, I get to have a relationship with you. God, thank you for that. And as we do this, as we apply gratitude in our relationship with God, look what happens. Our focus shifts from me so much more to God, because we begin to see everything as being provided by Him. Our focus shifts, our perspective shifts, and we grow in our relationship with Him, and we find that peace that transcends all understanding, that happiness, that joy that we are ultimately all looking for. That's why happy people are grateful people. And so today, like I said earlier, I so want this room to be full of the happiest people on the planet. I desire you to experience the happiness that comes as a result of gratitude. But like I said, we have to do something with it. It's not enough just to walk out of here and go, I'll get to that whole gratitude thing eventually. No, that's choosing unhappiness. I want you to be happy people. But we have to choose gratitude. And so today I want to end our time a little bit differently. You might have noticed there's two guys over here playing some music. They're awesome guys. They're great dudes. And what I want to do is I want you to take out your phone. Go ahead and take it out. And as you do that, what's going to happen is these two guys over here are going to play some music for us. And I want you to pull open your notes app, and I want you to type up 5 things that you are grateful for. And if you don't want to do it, just fake it to make me feel a little better. That's fine too. Write 5 things that you're grateful for and why you are thankful for those things in your life. I'm just going to give you about a minute or so, and I'm going to come back out and wrap us up. If you're still typing, that's totally fine. You can keep doing that. My hope for you is that you discover through gratitude the happiness, the joy, the peace that is right in front of you. And I hope you experience a closeness and a relationship with God because of what you're thankful for in a way like you never have before. But don't just walk out of here and think I'll get to it later. Begin practicing gratitude today because happy people are grateful people. Well, to pray for our time to wrap us up. Heavenly Father, thank you for your love for us. Thank you for your son, Jesus, that through him we're all sitting here today and that we get to have a relationship with you. Thank you for everything you provide in our life. Thank you that we get to live in a place where we get to come to church and be together. Thank you for your grace, that there's nothing we can do to earn your love. You just give it freely to us. God, in the next week, in the next month, through the holidays and going into the new year, would you help us not just feel grateful, but act it, make it a habit in our life, and consistently wake up each day and go, God, thank you for how you provide. Help us do that. Give us the strength with what we're going through to do that. We know that you're ultimately a place of peace and happiness, and we just want to experience that. God, we pray all of this in your son's name. Amen. Guys, thank you so much for being here today. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week as we begin a brand new Christmas series. Have a great Sunday.